while keeping in mind that there are traditional and non-traditional forms of leadership. Taking care of or tutoring your siblings is leadership just as much as leading a school club is. It's important that students tell us about themselves too, not just describe the leadership role. So reflecting on what was accomplished or learned from their experience can help us better understand the student's personal context. Question number 2 is every person has a creative side, and it can be expressed in many ways. Problem solving, original and innovative thinking, and artistically, to name a few. Describe how you express your creative side. With this question, the key words you're focusing on here are describe and express. We're looking to understand how students spend their time through this context, not just learn about their creative sides. That's important to keep in mind. As we look at other questions that we offer on the application, question number 3 is, what would you say is your greatest talent or skill? How have you developed and demonstrated that talent over time? With this question, it's important to remember that talents come in many forms. So this could be academic or social, could be something else entirely. Students need to consider if their talent has manifested in the classroom or in an extracurricular activity. And if it's mentioned somewhere else in the application, it's important to make sure that they're expanding upon that talent in a way that adds value to the application. In this question, I sometimes see students focus too much on talking about the talent rather than answering the question. So it's important to keep that in mind too. And for question number 4 here, we have describe how you have taken advantage of a significant educational opportunity or work to overcome an educational barrier you have faced. So in this question, it's important to choose one, but not both options, and talk about what you have done, not the opportunity or challenge in and of itself. With question number 5 here, you'll see question 5 is describe the most significant challenge you have faced and the steps you have taken to overcome this challenge. How has this challenge affected your academic achievement? Here, we sometimes see students focus only on the challenge rather than answering the full question, really about how that challenge has impacted their academic achievement. But students need to share the so what factor and really elaborate on what they did despite the challenge or because of the challenge that they faced. Question number 6 is think about an academic subject that inspires you. Describe how you have furthered this interest inside and or outside of the classroom. For questions like this, make sure to focus on how you developed your interest in this subject rather than what your plans are for the future or what this subject is. It's also important to separate the concept of a subject as your passion from a specific teacher or class. I see that one a lot where a student will talk about a class or a teacher. That's not really what we're asking here. So for question number 7, it focuses on what have you done to make your school or your community a better place? In this question, we want to understand what you have done, including specific actions that you took and why. It's also important to remember that students get to decide how they define their community in this regard. Community might be one's volleyball team, or it could be their neighborhood. And if it was a group effort, you should focus on what you specifically did in that situation, not what the overall group accomplished. For question 8, our final question, it asks, beyond what has already been shared in your application, what do you believe makes you stand out as a strong candidate for admission? This, quite possibly, is the hardest question to answer well. You'll see it featured on many university applications. Be careful and ensure you're crafting a response for the specific institution. We definitely sometimes see other institutions in some of these essays. It's important to, proofread your essay, make sure you're writing to the school that you're applying to. But consider also everything you've already included in the application. Don't just copy and paste in an answer from another application. Think about what's already been asked of you and focus on something new. Many students talk about their persistence, curiosity, motivation, and desire to attend the university. But this question, we want it to help us understand you as an individual. So I'd encourage you to avoid general characteristics that most students share. Additionally, focus on you. Don't use this as an opportunity to bring up specific things about your school or geography. Many universities will have like an additional comment section where you could notate that type of information, maybe about a variation in your school's grading scale, or if you've been impacted by COVID-19, anything that's impacted your academic journey there. Really focus on answering the question, regardless of which of the 8 you're answering. So, as kind of the next stage in our discussion today, I put together a few case studies. So, we're going to take some time to run through some examples of responses that we received to these personal insight questions at the University of California. Keep in mind that while questions and prompts will vary across universities and application platforms, you can use the information in these case studies to really ensure that you're crafting responses that are going to allow admission officers and application readers to better understand you and how you're going to fit into their campus community. So, some instructions for what we're really going to talk about today. On the next couple of slides, I'm going to have responses to specific personal insight questions. I'll read them aloud, but feel free to follow along with the text on your screen too. As we're reading and reviewing the response, think about whether the response adds value to or is a missed opportunity on the application. So keep in mind there are no good or bad responses here. We're focusing on what adds value or what is a missed opportunity. So you might ask what that means. Value added responses are those that are adding value to their application. They allow admissions to learn more about you. These can be entirely new topics not mentioned in the application, or they could be new or additional information about something that you've briefly mentioned, such as an extracurricular activity, a class listed in the academic record, maybe a special program that you've participated in. These should always include specific or tangible examples that focus on the decision, action, and really the impact to you as a student. Missed opportunities are those that do not provide more information or context for admissions to consider in their comprehensive or holistic review process. So common mistakes here include reiterating information that appears in other parts of the application, focusing on other people, and really just not answering the question. So I would also consider it a missed opportunity if the student elaborated on the circumstance rather than themselves, or if they're not offering specific tangible examples, or if they're too creative in their response, so the reader doesn't have sufficient evidence or information to review. It's totally fine to be creative, but your college admission essay is typically not poetry or a form of creative writing. It's either going to be more of an essay structure or a short answer. So when you think you know if the response is value added or a missed opportunity, feel free to let us know in the chat. I want this to be interactive. You're all here participating, so you might as well put it in the chat and we'll see how you all do. I know you won't have the full context of the entire application, but do your best with this. It's meant to be fun and informative, so it's okay if you don't get it right. But think about these factors and how they can relate to your own writing prompts and application process. So for our first prompt here, we're going to actually focus on leadership. The first case study, the response is in reply to the prompt. Describe an example of your leadership experience in which you have positively influenced others, helped resolve disputes, or contributed to group efforts over time. So the response from our applicant here is, coaching at Friday Night's Lights for roughly 3 years has not only stimulated substantial personal growth in the realms of my administrative, management, and leadership abilities, but for those I have had the pleasure of coaching as well, in the forms of collaboration, organization, and communication. Each session, I am assigned to roughly 8 children, usually from the ages of 6 to 10, which I lead autonomously for the entirety of a regular and playoff season. I determine a schedule of 2 practices per week in addition to the game each Friday, which is personalized to each family and their lives. I teach young ones fundamental skills that will help them succeed in games such as proper throwing, catching, route running, and defensive techniques. I establish a unique playbook of both offensive and defensive formations and help the players memorize the plays. Most importantly, I aspire to develop a positive environment for my players in which they benefit from healthy competition, exercise, and camaraderie. In other aspects of life, I remain that same coach. I tutor native Spanish speakers in the English language. I founded a political chapter in my local area to promote the ideas of like-minded individuals. I advocated for and established the teenage faction of Mensa to build a stronger, more robust community. When qualified and capable, fulfilling a leadership role is an opportunity I aspire to see those who you lead succeed, whether it be scoring a touchdown, learning foreign vernacular, or anything in between, is a magnificent sight which I strive for consistently and will continue to pursue. So, what do you all think? Is this response a missed opportunity, or does it provide added value to the application? I'll give you all a second to put that in the chat. We can see how you do. Come on, you guys can do it. Really? No one's going to respond? Okay, I see some coming in. Awesome, lots of added value. Great. Awesome, and you guys are right on track. So when we look at this particular case study, it is a value add. So you're right. This example adds value to the application. The writer's talking about a relevant experience. They're providing great details with specific contextual information. So we can fully understand what the writer has accomplished here because they outline skills, time spent, audience, and benchmarks. The student even provides another example at the end of the prompt, but ties that example effectively into the theme of the student's personal leadership style. So think about that as you're writing your own essays, as you're gathering kind of your thoughts on what you're going to put down on paper. Consider these types of things. All right, though, let's try another one. So this case study specifically focuses on creative expression. So this response is in reply to the prompt. Every person has a creative side, and it can be expressed in many ways. Problem solving, original and innovative thinking, and artistically, to name a few. So describe how you express your creative side. When it comes to the response, we see, like science, art can be explored without tremendous foundational knowledge and does not have boundaries. During the pandemic, I've had more time to delve deeper into my creative expression. In only the last few months, I have taught myself many art forms. I knitted a full-size blanket and crocheted tops. I discovered metal stamping, mandala making, and weaving. I have drawn, painted, embroidered, and made collages. I learned by trial and error, using makeshift tools from around my house and starting over again and again. However, my greatest creative expression has been my art wall. This wall is an imperfect conglomeration of pictures representing thoughts that go through my mind. Scattered throughout this collection are various self-portraits. A marker drawing from April 2020 captures my despair as the world was in full lockdown and panic, but I'm looking at a tiny butterfly that represents hope. My room is now covered in butterflies. A watercolor portrait from July is done in rainbow colors, exuberant, as I've realized I possess successful tools to overcome my anxiety. A cartoon strip of me interacting with organic molecule beings is silly, but helped me clarify their functions, as online learning is often hard to digest. In a charcoal sketch, I'm sitting under a tree of life formed entirely from a mathematical proof. My wall is not just like a sketchbook or diary, but also how I reflect on problems, academic and otherwise. The art world and science world do not exist in isolation. Problem solving and innovation require creativity, not mindless understanding of a discipline. Even though my artistic side may not be what is first perceived about me, it is imperative to my thinking and will give me the broader creative STEAM perspective needed in my future endeavors. So, with this response, what do you all think? Is it value added to the application, or it is a missed opportunity here? Go ahead and put what you think it is in the chat. I'm watching. I'll give you all a second. Have some water too. All right, I see some missed opportunity, a couple added value. All right, so we're a little split on this one. All right, so I've seen a little of both, and this one's definitely tricky. So when it comes to this one, it would be a missed opportunity, in my opinion. It is tricky though. So I would evaluate this response as a missed opportunity because while the student gives good examples of art forms, the response really does not provide any quantifiable information. So we could have learned more if the student told us how many art forms, over what time period they were created, or if they've been exhibited online or in a gallery. The student could have easily introduced us to a process of trial and error as well that would have shed more light on their thought patterns and choices. They talked about that a little bit, but they didn't really elaborate. The art wall that is mentioned really does sound interesting to me, but it lacks really enough detail to explain how this wall helped the student overcome anxiety. So while the student mentions reflecting on problems, they're not explaining how. And that's what I would say it's important to focus on here. So while the response is good, we're left with many questions unanswered. And I think this is a great example of why it's important to have someone else read your writing after you've completed it. You can kind of work to avoid this pitfall by having someone proofread it and really give you their thoughts. If they can talk to you afterwards about what it is that they read, what it is they heard from your writing, then that'll help you better understand how it's presenting to others. And so let's try one more. This particular case study focuses on a talent or skill. So this response addresses the prompt, what would you say is your greatest talent or skill? How have you developed and demonstrated that talent over time? So this particular applicant has responded, my parents tell me that after I attended my first cultural dance convention when I was 4, I just wouldn't stop dancing for days after. I would flail my arms and legs, jumping around on the carpet in my little green frock, trying to mimic what I had seen. What is wrong with her? They wondered. She's never done this before. Soon, they figured it out and decided to enroll me in dance classes so that I could put my passion somewhere that wasn't our apartment's living room. Ever since, I always loved to dance, but I never expected it to be the one constant in my life. 12 years later, the most important day of my life had arrived. It was the pinnacle of my dance journey and was the day I had been training over a decade for, my first solo dance debut. Even though the event marks a dancer's entrance into professionalism, I was used to seeing other students from my dance school discontinue dance as soon as they had completed it. I was expecting to do the same. While I was used to hearing stories of how relieved people felt after completing their recitals, I felt the opposite. I felt sadness as I held my last pose. To think that my time as a rising artist could already come to an end left a pit in my stomach. I refused to let a moment that others allowed to be their end be mine too. Following my first solo, I took a series of college courses and earned a diploma in my cultural dance form to further educate myself about the historical and theoretical aspects of my art form. I traveled internationally and performed at world dance conventions. The little girl who flailed her body in her green frock has become the dancer she was once inspired by. All right, so with this prompt, what do you all think? Go ahead and put it in the chat. Do you think it's a missed opportunity or do you think it's a value add for this one? All right, I'm seeing some missed opportunities. All right, looks like that's the predominant response. All right, so for this one, I agree. I would say that this is a missed opportunity. So thank you all for participating in this. The first paragraph of this response, it was about a childhood experience. So while it provides great context to the story, there's quite a bit of space dedicated to something that happened quite a long time ago. So keep that in mind as you're writing your essays. You want to focus on relevant current information. If you're applying to an undergraduate program for a bachelor's degree, typically I would recommend focusing on those high school years and only providing the bare minimum of context from prior years to ensure that the reader understands the story. Additionally, the solo dance debut leaves unanswered questions for me. So reading this makes me wonder, how was the student selected? Was it a competition or just open scheduling? How did the student develop their routine? How long did they spend preparing? Who was the audience? Lots of questions. So that's important to keep in mind too. If you're leaving your reader with a lot of questions, maybe you should try and work some of those into the story so that they have a fully formed picture of this particular experience for you. Finally, the student mentions traveling internationally and performing at world dance competitions. This is excellent information, but it needs more context as well. So I'm thinking things like, how often did they travel? What was the selection process? Did the student compete during the academic year or in the summer? Was it maybe impacting some of their academics? Did they have to leave school for these performances? And then who was the audience? Was it a competition or was it for cultural events? So all of these things are important to consider as you're writing your own essays. You want to ensure that you're setting yourself up for success as application readers review what you have submitted. We can't make assumptions. We only know what you're telling us. So don't leave us with questions. Make sure to address the writing prompt that you're answering fully as well. So now I have some writing tips for you all as you enter into this process yourselves. When it comes down to it, there's no perfect way to answer a college application question, which I know is hard to hear. Everyone always wants that secret formula. So while there's no perfect way, there are plenty of things to consider to ensure you get your points across and are really adding value to your application. So as you're considering various writing prompts, ensure that you're providing information and context that's not found in other parts of the application. Don't worry about having the right hook or starting sentence to capture a reader's attention. And don't worry about using uncommon vocabulary words. This isn't like an SAT exam. We want to get to know you. We're not focused on some impressive vocabulary word that you might have just learned. You only have so many words, so avoid repetition and showcase who you are. And keep in mind that prompts and questions can mean different things to different people. If the university that you're applying to offers workshops on admission essays, something like this, attend them if you can. Hear it directly from the source. And this will give you a better idea of what the admissions officers at that particular school are looking for as they read your writing. Some institutions may want to see more of an academic essay, while others, like the University of California, really focus on learning about you. And we're encouraging you to use statements like I and my to really get your point across. Make sure to use your own natural voice when you're writing these essays. We want to get to know you, even if it's an academic essay. We want to hear from you, not a friend, a parent, or a teacher. We really want to understand what you're going to add to the campus community. So put your best foot forward and advocate for yourself and your experiences. proofread diligently to ensure that your writing makes sense to readers and that you're using the appropriate language and grammar, as well as getting rid of any extra words. I know I always go through my essays and use the find and replace feature in Word. You can use that to take out words that you repeat over and over. I know I write that a lot when I'm typing essays. So keep those types of things in mind. Identify your own writing tics and try and work through them to ensure that you're being clear in your writing. And while some of you may be considering applying to creative majors, these writing prompts aren't necessarily the best time to showcase creative writing, comedy, or poetry skills. Even sarcasm doesn't come across very well necessarily, depending on who the reader is. So really focus on answering the prompt at hand. Additionally, I sometimes think there is a misconception that students aren't allowed to write about their identities, ideals, values, or beliefs. This isn't true. You definitely can. But keep in mind that if you do choose to focus on one or more of these topics, it's important to focus on how they specifically have impacted you or why they're important to you. My advice to you all: find someone who isn't familiar with the things mentioned in your response, whether it's a particular activity or a whole aspect of your life, and ask that person to proofread the writing for you. So this will help to ensure that you give the appropriate amount of detail for your readers to understand. In fact, if you have the time, it can be helpful to write your response in stages and get feedback from different people at each stage. So the University of California has actually put together a few resources for students who are working on their personal insight questions for the UC application. I'm going to put a link to that in the chat as well, just in case you have any additional questions, you want some additional support as you're navigating this portion of your US university applications. Even though it's our website, it's very helpful for all essay writing purposes. Lots of great information there. I hope you all have found this presentation helpful though, as you approach the process of writing essays and responses for your university applications. Before we transition to the Q&A, I'd like to provide you all with some more information on the university that I work for, the University of California, Berkeley. So this is our campus right here. The bell tower is very well known. You can actually see it all the way over in San Francisco, which is across the bay from our campus. But UC Berkeley was founded in 1868. And we were actually the first University of California campus in the system. Right now, there are actually 9 different undergraduate campuses for the University of California spread throughout the state. UC Berkeley, because it's the first, is often referred to as just Cal. Some people also call us Berkeley. So we're now one of 9, as I said, and while all of our campuses utilize the same standard UC application for undergraduate admission, we are very different when it comes to our entry requirements, locations, and campus communities, as well as the majors offered. So that's something to keep in mind. UC Berkeley is located in the town of Berkeley. We're just across the Bay Bridge from San Francisco, next to Oakland as well, up in Northern California. We're also 40 minutes from Silicon Valley, so the tech hub of California. This location is ideal as our students can take advantage of being part of a diverse community with access to the cultural events and internship potential of a major city, especially in industries like technology, film, business, and computer science. Berkeley itself, though, is an eclectic college town. And in a way, I'd say the community here in Berkeley is really just an extension of the campus. We have about 30,000 undergraduate students in a town of about 120,000. So approximately 1 in every 4 people in the community is a student. This means that Berkeley is very safe, welcoming, and really focused on the student experience. There's lots of restaurants though too, places to go shopping, like outdoor activities, various cultural events, and lots of internship and research opportunities too. Berkeley is one of the premier universities in the world, so I don't like to focus too much on rankings because they really only mean as much as the university being a good fit for you. If the university is not a good fit for you, the ranking doesn't so much matter. But we are ranked first among America's best colleges by Forbes, so that is something we're proud of. One of the primary reasons for this, though, is our students. So our students are coming in every single year with a commitment to service, leadership skills, intellectual curiosity, really an ability to think outside of the box. And that's what makes us who we are as an institution. So when you look at just kind of what the university is all about, looking at where our students come from, you'll notice our student body is representative of many different backgrounds. We have students from over 100 different countries studying on our campus, and more than 20 different first languages are spoken by our student body. It's a very diverse and global community where you can start to build your own personal network. And while each student, of course, is having a different experience during their college years, Berkeley's focused on facilitating opportunities for students to really discover themselves and thrive. So I would say our students are most known for being scholars, students who pursue knowledge both inside and outside of the classroom. And as a student, you can rest assured that you'll have access to the resources and faculty that you need to succeed, whether that's in your classes, research, or extracurricular opportunities, or maybe something else entirely. Even though Berkeley is a large campus, you're looking at a student to faculty ratio of 18:1, and about 70% of your classes will actually be 30 students or less. So we're doing a lot to make things very manageable and ensure you're getting access to faculty. And when it comes to academics, here at Berkeley, we have over 150 different undergraduate majors across 5 colleges and 1 school. So just to briefly talk about them, the College of Letters and Sciences is our largest college. They admit approximately 75% of our incoming students. We also have the College of Chemistry, which is one of our smaller colleges, and it's actually one of the only colleges in the country specifically dedicated to the discipline of chemistry. Our College of Engineering is the most competitive college to gain admission to. No surprise there, engineering is a pretty popular major. And it's one of the top engineering colleges in the world. Another smaller college, the College of Environmental Design, focuses on things like architecture and urban planning. And the Rouser College of Natural Resources has a wonderful history in the UC system. It's actually the oldest college across all of the UCs, and it has an emphasis on the intersection of natural resources, or the lack of them, and human health. And then last but not least is our Berkeley Haas School of Business. It's actually the 2nd oldest business school in the US and one of the top as well. For more detailed information on the majors offered within these colleges, I always recommend checking out our academic guide. It's just guide.berkeley.edu. I'll put a link in the chat for you as well in case anyone is curious about our majors. But that's really the conclusion of our presentation today. So I want to leave you all with some contact information for us here at Berkeley. If you'd like to learn more about UC Berkeley in the future, I highly encourage you to attend a full virtual admissions presentation. We're doing them online right now, as well as in person if you're ever in the Berkeley area. You can visit our website to sign up for a presentation, take a virtual tour, view one of our recorded presentation options. You can also follow us on social media. So for more information on that, I've got one more link for you all. I'll put that in the chat as well. And with that, I am happy to answer any questions. I know I've seen a couple coming in the Q&A. What's the best way to do this? Do I have a moderator or should I just start going through the chat and see what's in there?
I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that for you, Daniel.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you so much.
Right, thank you.
Thank you so much. So enlightening, so much information. And two takeaways from your presentation is added value and missed opportunities. So think about the content instead of something else. So that's so much helpful, Daniel. All right. Okay, so before we go to the Q&A, let me see that how many questions that we have here. I think we have a bunch here. So before that, could you answer my questions? My question is, as you work as an assistant director in the admissions, what is the first thing you guys look in terms of the somebody's essay? Do you guys look from the beginning until the end of their essay, or just what?
Yeah, so at UC Berkeley, we read every application that we receive at least twice. As I said earlier, we're actually training some of our new application readers this week. I've been in day-long trainings every single day. It's always a fun time of the year, really so that we can calibrate and ensure that we're all looking at these applications in a very similar manner. We call it norming, so that we're normed with each other. But so when it comes to those personal insight questions and reviewing these essays and your short responses, we're reading everything that you write for each response. And we're using that to assess really what kind of characteristics you have as a student, what you could potentially bring to our campus community. And we use that as additional information. You're already telling us your extracurriculars, you're already, showing us your grades, showing us, if you are doing like an American curriculum and have AP exam scores, or you're doing an IB curriculum and you have IB exam scores, you're showing us those too. But all of these factors kind of come together to help us make that recommendation for admission. So there's no one specific thing we're looking for in those personal insight questions, other than to get to know you better and understand what you would bring to our campus.
All right. Thank you so much, Danielle. And maybe some of you might thinking, probably the admissions are not looking for the whole my essay. Not. The answer is not. They're gonna look from the beginning until the end of your essay. So make sure you write the whole things, the prompt that the university asks to you. All right. So we have questions regarding, okay, from Ahmad. He's asking about he doesn't have a lot of he doesn't have a great experience to tell. So is that going to be so impacted to our essay or not?
So everyone has a different experience. Everyone has a different life journey, a different academic journey. And I hear this from students all the time, like, what do I tell you? I don't really have anything to share. And I'm sure that you do. So it's helpful to take some time to kind of brainstorm, step outside yourself, talk to friends and family, really talk to others about themselves and think about how the things they talk about relate to differences in yourself. That can really help to start to assess what might be good to write about and ask them the same questions. Ask them the questions that you're seeing on these college application essays and see how they would respond. Don't write what they say, but use what they say to think about what you personally, how you interact with that, how you interact with the question. I always think that's a great place to start, because talking to others, hearing, their experiences, that's going to help you to kind of jog your memory and think about things that you might have been through that might have been different experiences that you could then use in your writing.
Yeah, so everybody has their own experience to tell, and you can write everything you have. All right, so another question is it preferred to write an explicit and direct style or engaging and creative stories?
Yeah, so I would say, stay away from the creative side. It's great if you have that creativity and you have that ability, but you have a limited word count here. And we really want you to get at the heart of the question, focus on answering that, and be direct, because with creative writing, it leaves a lot up to interpretation typically. And you don't want what you're writing to be misinterpreted. You want to ensure that your writing is clear and direct as possible so that the application reader is going to understand the points that you're trying to get across. So that's always why I encourage focusing more on that direct communication style when you're writing. Creativity is great. And if you're applying to a creative program, definitely double check the instructions on that application. Make sure that's not something they're asking for. But that would be kind of my piece of advice in that regard.
All right, thank you so much. We're still waiting more questions from you guys. Okay, from Karina. Which applying as undecided or undeclared affect our competitiveness in admission? Is it better to apply as undecided or declare a major immediately during our application? That's the questions from Karina.
Yeah, so that's a great question. The way that the University of California application is structured, you're actually required to select a major Or if you're applying to like our College of Letters and Science at UC Berkeley, you could indicate undeclared. The important thing to consider, regardless of where you're applying, is how are applicants being assessed? So at UC Berkeley, all of our colleges, except for the College of Letters and Science, they're admitting students directly to the major. So a lot of those colleges don't even have undeclared options. You do need to select a major right on the application. And if you select one and then decide you want to change your mind, it's not guaranteed that you'd actually be able to switch to that new program. So that's important to keep in mind too. If you're not sure what you want to study and you're applying to UC Berkeley, our College of Letters and Science is the best place to call home. They do have an undeclared option, and that's not held against you if you indicate that on your application. If you're saying you're interested in coming in undeclared, all of the students in our College of Letters and Science, they're considered all together for admission to the college. And then by their second or third year of study, they're declaring that major once they're already on campus. That does vary school to school though. So depending on what campuses, what universities you're looking at applying to, I would definitely check their individual policies. Typically smaller liberal arts schools that might only have a couple thousand students aren't as focused on what you're interested in majoring in. But larger schools, schools that have caps for specific programs that can only admit so many students to any one major, they might be more interested in knowing that in advance, and it could ultimately impact your admission.
All right, thank you so much. So you have to make sure with the program that you're applying to, whether they give an undeclare, or you have to directly to just the major that you want to look for. Okay, so before we answer another question from the chat box, so my question is, education is help a lot of Indonesians, preparing their essays sometimes. What the common mistakes that I see is repetitiveness. That's happened a lot in the writing. Sometimes they say there's so much overlapping in their topic. What is there any tips and strategy on that, Daniel? Because sometimes myself, I do a lot of repetitions on my writing. So how we overcome that, that situation?
Yeah, I think that that's definitely where proofreading is very important. And I'd even recommend having people proofread your entire application as well, because it's not only just repetition within an essay or within a short answer, but repetition throughout the application itself. So I see this all the time where students will, tell us their list of extracurriculars, which is one section of the application. And then I'll get to their personal insight questions, those short answer responses, and they'll essentially just tell me the same thing that they've already said in the extracurricular section. They won't provide really any more details. They won't elaborate on that experience. And that doesn't really add any value for me. That's a missed opportunity when filling out the application. So proofread, have people read over what you're writing, ask them questions, tell them you want them specifically to look out for that repetition of information. And if it comes down to like a specific word that you're repeating a lot or a specific phrase, I know one of my colleagues says meanwhile a lot. He also says although so much. And so we've actually gone through, when he's writing up documents, we'll go through and we'll use the find and replace function in Microsoft Word so that we can actually find all of the times that he's written the same word over and over or the same phrase and remove them from that writing or replace them with something else. So that's a good tip too, if it's just like a little segment. But if it's a broader concept that you find that you're repeating, really having someone proofread that before you submit it can be the best thing to really help address it.
Okay, somebody, I don't know, you can ask somebody can help you to proofread your essay. That is the best tips and strategy to avoid the repetitions in your writing. Okay, so is there anybody who want to unmute or want to ask directly to Daniel? Any questions? I mean, like the topic that we discussed here is not any other questions, but is there anybody?
Yes. Is
Yes.
the prompt question going to be the same every year?
So for the University of California application, the prompts are typically the same year after year. We have changed them slightly a couple of times in like the last decade. But if you're going to apply in the future, you can go into the application this year, take a peek at it. Every single year it opens in August and then it closes on November 30th. So now is a great time to do that if you just want to prepare for down the line in a future year that you're going to apply. We also on our application website post those prompts too. As far as I know, we're not expecting any changes for students that are going to be applying to fall 2023. Of course, students who are applying to fall 2022 are using the application right now. They haven't made announcements about further down the line, but yeah, they are typically very similar, if not exactly the same.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, thank you so much. Is there anybody want to ask again? For
Yes,
Daniel?
may I?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, hello, Daniel. Thank you so much for your great explanation. I would like to ask, does UC Berkeley provide an extended program for the diploma students? For example, like I was just graduated with Diploma 3 in Indonesia. It's like 3 years of education. And if I would like to pursue my study through the extended program at UC Berkeley for the bachelor's degree, is that possible?
So unfortunately, we don't offer an extended program in that capacity. So our minimum admission requirements are that you be eligible for a university of similar caliber within your home country. Typically for students coming from Indonesia, that's having graduated with their high school degree, doing really well within their program. If they're not in a national curriculum, maybe they're in an international baccalaureate program, or they're in an international or American school. But you do need to have that full high school diploma to apply for the bachelor's degree program. And then we don't often accept transfer students internationally. We do have a transfer application for students who are applying to join us in their junior year, their third year of study. But it is pretty difficult because we don't know exactly what courses will transfer until we receive your application for admission to ensure that you're meeting the eligibility requirements. So if you were to start university and then want to transfer, we do need to see that full 2 years of initial study before you'd be eligible to transfer.
Thank you so much, Daniel.
No, definitely.
Thank you so much for the questions. Okay, probably we can accept 1 or 2 more questions if you want to ask directly to Daniel. So while waiting, somebody asked a question. There's a question from Ferdinand. Yeah, full scholarship. Is there any full scholarship for international students?
So unfortunately, at the University of California, as we're a state institution, the majority of our financial aid dollars and scholarships do go to California residents. It's state mandated that that funding be used for California students. So while the university doesn't really offer any scholarship opportunities for international students, I do know some that have had success in securing external scholarships that can go towards their studies. That's definitely something you can do. A great place to start is always looking, within your local community to see if there's anyone willing to help finance college degrees abroad. But yeah, unfortunately, we do not have much aid for international students in that regard.
All right, it's clear so far about the scholarship. Okay, is there anybody want to ask directly to Daniel?
I
Hi, can I
have
ask?
another question.
Sure,
Is
go
that
ahead.
true that people are saying if we want to be transferred to the UC, like for example Berkeley or UCLA, you better have a college like somewhere in the California instead like saying from Washington or other states?
Sure.
Yeah, so it is actually best in those instances if you're looking to transfer, and that's actually a great way to lower the overall cost of your degree too, if you're looking at these other funding options. There's a pathway essentially through the California community colleges. About 95% of the transfer students who we admit every year have attended a California community college. So that's a great way. They have advisors on the campuses at these community colleges in California to really set you up with success in terms of transferring to the UCs, all UCs, not just Berkeley. And then there's also an online resource. It's assist.org. But that's essentially an online resource where all of the articulation agreements are available for these community colleges. So you can see exactly how the classes you're taking at a California community college will transfer to a University of California institution. So that's part of why it's easier, is because we have all of these agreements in place. You know exactly what courses you need to take to be eligible for admission and to be competitive for admission. I would say 100% that is the best way to ensure your success as a transfer student. But yeah, I mean, you can attend other institutions. It just becomes harder because even if it's a community college outside of California, we don't have articulation agreements with them. So any outside of the state community colleges, any four-year institutions, any universities abroad, we don't have those articulation agreements in place. So it can become difficult to know if you've taken that full 2 years of university coursework that's required to transfer. And it's also difficult to know before you apply if you're taking the right classes to be competitive for the major that you're applying to as well.
All right, so probably we're gonna take a questions from a chat box from Samuel. Okay, so just he asking about the timeline. Okay, he's applying for the 2023. What's the best time for start preparing and writing the essay?
Oh, you can start right now. So while the application isn't available yet for fall 2023, I definitely encourage you to start brainstorming and working on these essays now. It's never too early in that regard. The application for fall 2023 will open up next August. So August 2022, you'll be able to log in, see the entire application, and then the deadline for submission would be November 30th. You can submit at any time during the month of November. But yeah, definitely start working on the essays now. Check out those resources I provided for the University of California and look at the websites for other institutions that you're interested in too. Start getting connected with admissions offices and ask them, you know, if they have anything different that they're looking for. Because if you need to write an academic essay for this school and you need to write more of a narrative or personal essay for another school, that's going to be more work for you. It's good. You want to have your options open, but it also is going to be time consuming. So starting early will set you up for success there.
Yes, always remember added value and miss opportunity while you're writing your essay. Okay, we're going to take one more question. Is there anybody want to ask directly to Danielle before? Yes, somebody go ahead.
Can you share the website that you say for the transfer agreement? Is there a website, specific website?
I just put it in the chat for you.
Okay.
Oh, thank you very much.
Okay, is there anybody who want to ask one more question?
I want to ask a question.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so there's this student program in Indonesia called ISMA, or Indonesian International Student Mobility, and I noticed that UC Berkeley is not one of the institutional affiliates. And I was wondering if there's a possibility to use Berkeley to become one of the institutional affiliates in the future.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the program. Definitely open to learning more about it though. If you go onto our website, you can actually, I'll put the link in the chat for you too. But if you go onto our website, you can submit a contact us form that'll go straight to me since I'm the contact for Indonesia. Just provide me with some more information about this program, what it is you're looking for, and I'll check it out and see what we can do.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for attending the presentation.
All right. Okay, that is the contact. That's the contact that directly to you, Danielle.
Yes. Yep. Go straight to my email.
All right. Okay. All right. 1 hour. That's so much information. Thank you so much for the time. Thank you so much for the information. I know this is so much we can learn from this. Okay, so we encourage students right now to at least edit failure and miss opportunity while writing their essay. All right, anything else, Danielle, you want to say before we close?
Thank you so much for hosting this opportunity. I love helping students out with their application process. If any of you have follow-up questions, again, use that link, reach out to me. I'm happy to help. Best of luck with your college application process and that journey. I know it is a journey. It feels like it now, and it'll continue to feel like it. But best of luck and it'll all work out in the end. Thank you all for attending.
All right, thank you, Daniel. Thank you, everyone here. Thank you so much. Okay, we're gonna meet you again in another event, Education USA. All right, thank you, Daniel. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, everyone. I'm gonna end this meeting. All right, bye-bye. See you next time.